Hello and welcome to Copeland Plays, where today we are going to be doing a 100 subscriber special. Thank you all so much for helping me get to 100 subs. I was absolutely floored this morning when I saw it tick up over to 100. So for today, I wanted to make something a little special, and I'm going to be going through my entire video game collection. So you can see some of the physical games I've got behind me. I've also got a bunch of digital games that we'll jump over and take a look at. And I'll do kind of a short review of the ones I've actually played and tell you if they're worth your time or not. Again, thank you guys so much for 100 subs. The support's been unbelievable this past couple months. Never thought we would hit it this soon. It's amazing. Thank you all so much. Let's get into it. All right, so to start off, I've got the Pokemon Sword and Shield. I own both of these. This was the first game I actually bought on Nintendo Switch, so a little background. I wasn't really a gamer prior to the pandemic. I would play online games from time to time, what have you, but I wasn't a console gamer or anything, and I picked up a Switch, and the first game I got was Pokemon Sword, which is terrible. It's by far my least favorite of the modern Pokemon games, and then for some reason, I bought the other one months later. They're fine. I've gone back and they're better than I first experienced, but I was very disappointed on first playthrough. I thought the environments were bland. I thought everything about it was bland. The story was boring. Not the best Pokemon games, but if you need Pokemon on the Switch, there are some other options now, but back in the day, this was all we had. So after being disappointed by Pokemon, I picked up Animal Crossing New Horizons. Animal Crossing New Horizons is excellent. I love the inside cover of this game. It's Animal Crossing. You probably know about it, but if you don't, it's kind of a island simulator. So you can build up your island. You can have new neighbors move in. You can collect new furniture items. Very chill and cozy game with like beachy vibes for this one because it's on an island. It's called New Horizons. Very good game if you haven't got it on Switch yet. And while we're on the topic of great games on the Switch, Zelda Breath of the Wild. I always like to flex. I got this game for $25 the day after Christmas, which is like the best sale I've ever found on it. I actually only played this during the pandemic, so I was pretty late to the party, but I was still blown away by it. I could not put it down. 60 hours melted away in what felt like no time. Great game. It did feel a little tedious, and while we're on the topic of great games, all that tedium was fixed. In Breath of the Wild sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, probably my favorite game of last year. Absolutely excellent title. Nintendo nailed it. Really fixed a lot of the gripes I had with Breath of the Wild. Never looked at this inside cover. Kind of lame. Kind of fixed a lot of the problems I had with Breath of the Wild. A lot of the tedium had been taken out. Tons of new mechanics. I loved riding around on my hover bike. That was by far my favorite part. I actually mapped the entire depths before beating the game just because I loved riding around on my hover bike so much. Highly recommend this game if you haven't played it yet. Moving along, we have got Pokemon Violet. So this is the most recent Pokemon title that has come out to the Switch, and I love this game. It runs like garbage. It looks like garbage. The mechanics aren't that interesting. There's no reason to love this game except the fact that I just love watching Pokemon run around. I'm a huge Pokemon fan since my childhood, and this game captures just what I always wanted to do as a kid, which was run around and catch Pokemon and see them interacting in the world and see them interacting with each other. But I will say, if that sounds cool to you, Nintendo already did it better with Pokemon Legends Arceus, the best Pokemon game on Switch, without a doubt. If you do not own this game yet and you're a Pokemon fan, time to treat yourself. It's awesome. It's almost like Monster Hunter meets Pokemon. You have these big boss battles that you have a dodge roll for, and you're like throwing like balls at the bosses while like fighting them in little tiny turn-based battles. It's awesome. Also, all the Pokemon are just kind of in the overworld. Like there's not a big emphasis on battling in this game, which actually makes it even more fun. I think turn-based battling is getting a little stale to me in Pokemon. This game fixes everything. Highly, highly, highly recommend Pokemon Legends Arceus. On the topic of JRPGs, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So this was one of my first titles I picked up for Nintendo Switch, and this game is insane. Like it's so vast, and when I played it initially, I didn't really get what the game was going for so much. I knew it was MMO inspired, but if you've been following the channel recently, I actually played World of Warcraft for the first time on the channel, and this is like single player WoW, but it's better. The missions are really fun and grindy, just like an MMO would be. There are lots of reasons to check out this game. The story's amazing. I never did get through it, I'm probably around the halfway point. The anime-ness of this game was a little hard to deal with at times, but outside of that, amazing story, amazing world. Definitely check out Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition if you get a chance. And don't check out Xenoblade Chronicles 2. That game looks like a nightmare. All right, up next, I've got kind of a fake physical game. I have the Borderlands, is it the Handsome Collection? Legendary Collection. Handsome Collection's a different one. So the Borderlands Legendary Collection, and you can see up top here, it just was a digital code, so it actually does not have a game inside. I think I still have the code in there, yep. The only reason I bought this game, it was $5 cheaper to get a box with a code than buying it digitally. So I bought the box with the code. I've only played through the first, so this is Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel, kind of the original-ish trilogy, the most original feeling trilogy. I've only played through Borderlands 1, actually. I never even played through 2 yet, and I loved it. I think Borderlands 1 works so nicely on the Switch. My only complaint is like the environments in 1 aren't that cool, but the monsters are cool. I really like the characters. There's one, I think her name's like Patricia something. She's this archaeologist who's stranded by her company searching for the vault, and like all of her squadron has died, and she's just like alone being screwed over. Very funny. The humor in this game is super hit and miss. There are times where I was laughing out loud, and there were a lot more times where I was cringing because it was a game that I think came out in like 2008. So it's an older game, and some of the humor hasn't aged quite so well. There is a remaster that fixes a lot of those issues, but this is not the remastered version. This is the original Xbox 360 version. All right, so we talked about Monster Hunter when we were talking about Pokemon Legends Arceus, but this is Monster Hunter Rise, the first Switch Monster Hunter game, I believe. So it's set for Switches. This game's awesome, but I kind of had some problems with it. So the Monster Hunter loop is you go out into these big, vast environments and you hunt down like these mega boss monsters. They basically all look like dinosaurs. Super rad, really fun to fight these bosses. But then you get to the late game and it's just like, fight the same boss, grind its materials to get new equipment. And I didn't find that so rewarding, so I kind of fell off hard once I did that final boss fight. I do maybe one day want to go back and do the Sunbreak DLC. Maybe that will be something if I like stream one day, we could all hook up and play together. I think that could be pretty fun. But it was a very interesting game, and I'm very glad I got to experience Monster Hunter. It was a series I bounced off of multiple times before playing this one, and it's the perfect starting spot for a Monster Hunter fan. Going into, I forget about this game. Splatoon 3. Splatoon 3 was my first Splatoon. I'd heard really good things about Splatoon. YouTuber Chugga Conroy, he's one of my favorite Let's Players, and he Let's played Splatoon 2 right before Splatoon 3's release, and I would like to play Splatoon 3 and form my own opinions on it, and this game is fantastic. If you want a multiplayer shooter on the Switch, there's not a better option. Like, I know Fortnite's on the Switch, but this game just kills. It's so nice there's no microtransactions. I think a lot of people describe this game, you can see where you should spend money, and you just get to unlock stuff. It's so fun. Endless amounts of content. I didn't really have anyone to play it with, which I think caused me to bounce off a little quicker than others, but I still think this game's excellent, and if you need a shooter on the Switch, this is the one. Alrighty, here we've got another collection. The only other of my physical Switch games I haven't like completed per se. All these other games in the stack I've more or less played to completion, which is pretty impressive for me. I bounce off a lot of games. But we have the Assassin's Creed Ezio collection. I only played through Assassin's Creed 2, and I didn't even get to the end of it, but it was really cool. It was nice seeing an Ubisoft open world game that wasn't like a giant skill tree and 900 quest markers on your map. It's a much simpler, much more dialed back Ubisoft style open world. So much fun to run around. The way you get upgrades is like, you just see people in the story, like Leonardo da Vinci gives you all your upgrades and he's just like, hey, I built you this new thing. And instead of going to a skill tree, it's like built into the story. That was probably my favorite part of playing Ezio Collection. I do look forward to trying out the other two games in the collection. I've heard really good things about Brotherhood and Revelations, but maybe some other time. Next up, we got another open world game. Is this by Ubisoft? No, it's Techland. That's right, Techland. Dying Light. Fantastic game. This is the definitive edition, which came with the DLC. Oh, what's the DLC's name? I guess it doesn't say it on here, but there's a really cool DLC at the end. I'm surprised this game doesn't have more of a cult following. The story is bad. The story is outright bad, probably the worst part of the game, but the gameplay is so fun. It's like impossible to put down. Apparently there's lots of like rare items you can grind too. Like there are players still playing the original Dying Light, like unlocking new things. It's a zombie parkour game. Like the parkour feels great. The story beats are good enough, like moves the story ahead, but I really never liked the main villain. If you play the game yourself, you'll probably realize why. It's pretty ridiculous. And I've talked about how I finished all the games in the stack, but we are getting to my last two, which I got them both for Christmas, so I haven't quite finished them. The first one is Kirby and the Forgotten Lands. So I've actually put a good probably 5 hours into this one already. Love it. It's such a fun platformer. Way too easy, but that's a Kirby thing. Apparently the difficulty will ramp up when I get to the final levels, which I'm not quite there yet. But the mouthful mechanics of like getting to turn into different vehicles is really fun. Gameplay wise, just amazing. The co-op is really weird. I had a friend that was telling me that the co-op was like really whack. Like he bought the game to play co-op and the co-op partner can't get copy abilities. Really strange choice there, but outside of that, if you want a 3D platformer that isn't Mario Odyssey, check this one out. It's pretty good. And my final game is actually my only physical Switch game I've not even opened yet. As far as opened on my Switch, I did take the cellophane off because I do intend to play it. Pikmin 1+2, another game I got for Christmas. Really looking forward to playing through these two. Pikmin 1 and 2 were childhood favorites of mine, even though I didn't own them. I had a buddy who had Pikmin 2 and we would play the co-op all the time. I would go over to his house. So I was really excited when I saw this re-release. Both the games on the same cartridge, which is awesome. Really excited to get into this one. I might even play it on the channel or on stream because I would love to have a Pikmin series on the channel. And that's it for the Switch games physically. Let's jump onto my Switch real quick and we will look at what I have digitally. Right on. Okay, welcome to my Nintendo Switch. This is my digital collection. You can see some of my physical games here. Obviously, we'll glaze over the ones we already covered in the physical section. My first game that comes up alphabetically is Astral Ascent. If you didn't see the video, I uploaded a video on this game just a couple days ago. It really goes over the game well. Gameplay explains a lot of the mechanics. Amazing. It's kind of a Dead Cells style roguelike platformer. Like one of the best on the market. The amount of content in this game is ridiculous. It's made by a small team, funded by Kickstarter, like absolutely a ridiculous achievement for a game. If you haven't picked it up, please do. It's about 25 bucks. It's on Switch and PC. Hasn't got, oh, and PS5, just no Xbox release yet, but I believe that is coming. Next up, we have ATV Drift and Tricks. This game is terrible. I bought it for like $2, played it for about an hour. It's a ATV racing game where the engine sounds are far too loud. And so it just makes for a miserable experience. And there's no music, so it's just like the whole time. Really bad game, but if you want a good laugh and you find it for like $1 like I did, maybe kind of fun. Skipping over down, we now have Cult of the Lamb. This is an interesting roguelike. Think Hades style combat with like a kind of city builder in between runs. The idea for this game is rad. The art style is amazing. The like blend of mechanics I thought was really smart, but in reality, the game did not work for me. It sold amazingly well, which I'm really happy for the team that made it, but it just did not click with me. It performed really badly on the Switch at launch, which may have contributed, but the city building mechanics were really shallow and the combat wasn't very good either. So cool blend of genres, but not actually like a fun game. So sorry, Cult of the Lamb, not my favorite. Dicey Dungeons, haven't played a lot of this one, but it's kind of like a Slay the Spire, but instead of cards, it's dice. Very fun. I should play more of it, but I don't have enough time for all my roguelikes. F-Zero 99, one of my favorite games. So, little background, we actually played this on the channel. One of the first like big series we did. Big as in I got a lot of views on it, I should say. It's free if you're a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber. It's a battle royale racing game. Really cool idea. The execution is terrible. I didn't want to be super negative in my videos I made a long time ago about it, but the reason I stopped the series, the best game mode in F-Zero 99 is the Grand Prix. It's 5 back-to-back races where you, like 20 people are eliminated each time. They last like 20 minutes, super fun game mode, but you can only do it once every 3 hours. What the heck? Like, when I would miss the window to sign up for it, it was like, I don't want to play the game anymore. And you had to play the inferior mode, which was just one race with 99 people, essentially just a 99 person race. you pretty much had to play the boring mode to get tickets to play the good mode. It was a really confusing way of laying out the game. I don't know if it's changed, but I just struggled to make videos on it. It was really frustrating. Next up, we have Forager. Forager is an interesting game. It's kind of a survival game meets idle game. Big idle mechanics, and I'm a big idle game fan, so I was like on board for this, but it's okay. It gets really grindy and really repetitive. Usually in a good idle game will get more automated as you go, and Forager just got more tedious as I went. Not my favorite game, but it's a cool idea. Apparently the dev is a not very good guy, so if it doesn't sound that appealing to you, maybe don't support him. All right, moving on. Going Under is our next game. Going Under is so freaking funny. Genuinely the funniest game I've probably ever played. It is kind of a Souls-like dungeon crawling roguelike with just such good humor. You will not believe it. I genuinely recommend this game to everyone. The music is fire. The aesthetic is like those commercials you see for Facebook, very like corporate art. But that's the art style of the game. You basically, each dungeon is a failed tech startup, and you're also working at like essentially Amazon. Or no, you're working at a soda company that's also kind of like Amazon. But you're like taking out old like tech startups that are full of goblins. Such a funny game. The writing is genuinely funny. There are not a lot of games like it out there. And if you haven't checked out Going Under, you treat yourself right now. It's so good. I got it for like $5. Another game that's like $5, Golf Story. Also very funny. Kind of funny, I got these games back to back. Golf Story is kind of a golf RPG. Very cute art style. Really decent gameplay, like good golf gameplay. A little like performance buggy. Apparently a sequel was coming out called Sports Story that just performance was not up to snuff. Would like to check that out one day, but maybe on a different console. Golf Story is very good though. It was one of the first Switch eShop kind of hits, and I can totally see why. Next up, we have Hades, probably one of the best roguelikes ever made. You guys should know this game if you do not. Another dungeon crawling roguelike, but this little like mechanic is relationships. In this game, you can have relationships with pretty much any character. It's like the heart meters, like in a dating sim or something. You build up these relationships between runs with different characters, and the story is very good. Roguelikes usually don't have stories. This one has an excellent one. Highly recommend Hades. What else is there to say? Everyone's talked about it. Right into another game everyone's talked about, Hollow Knight. I didn't love it. Oh no, bad take. Hollow Knight's really hard, and it was one of the first games I got on my Switch, and I was a PC gamer before owning this Switch. Getting to grips with a controller I wasn't that used to was not the best way to experience Hollow Knight. I never finished it. I got stuck on a boss, and I probably should have just kept exploring, but I got tired. I think it's really fun. It's not my favorite style of like Metroidvania where you have to like fight with a sword, or my favorite style of platformer. I much prefer platformers where like combat is jumping on people. I know that's silly, but like personally it makes a big difference to me. Hollow Knight's still amazing. Atmosphere is bonkers. It's still a good game. But if you want a personal recommendation of mine, please, for the love of God, check out Kaze and the Wild Masks. Kaze and the Wild Masks, I mean, you can see how big I'm smiling, dude. It's such a good game. It's heavily inspired by Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3 on the Nintendo Switch, but with like much better modern design. Oh my God, it's so fun. Every level is so tightly designed. It's only about like a 5-hour experience front to back, and then you can go back and complete it. So much fun. I got it for like $4 on the eShop, and I really don't think this game gets enough attention. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. If you're one of my newer subscribers, you've been seeing me play a tactics game. This was my very first one, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. I liked it. I think it's where I realized I wasn't crazy about tactics games, because it would be really frustrating getting to like the last turn or the second to last turn of a fight and losing, and then having to go back and do it all again. There are good and bad things about Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, but it wasn't quite for me, I don't think. Metroid Prime Remastered. What a game. We'll get to it later, but as a kid, I owned this game on GameCube, and I could not get into it. I was constantly getting lost. But coming back to this game as an adult, Metroid Prime Remaster is a 10 out of 10 game. If you have not checked it out, please treat yourself. You will not forget this game. It's brilliant. The Show 22, haven't played a lot of this one, but it actually is a pretty fun game. Good sports game. If you are not like a sports fan and you want to play a sports game, highly recommend baseball sports games. Very easy to pick up and play, but lots of like depth in the mechanics. Next up, Pikmin 4. I've only played this one briefly, but it is something special. Nintendo really upped the ante for Pikmin. I do want to go back to this one after I finish 1 and 2 and maybe 3, but Pikmin 4 is a very brilliant game. Also, if I skip over any games on this, it's just because I never played them. Like I bought them and didn't play them, like Shining Pearl. Next up, we have Rayman Legends Definitive Edition. Earlier we were talking about platformers. Here's another fantastic platformer. Please, if you get the chance, check out Rayman Legends. It came out on the Wii U originally. It's a sequel to Rayman Origins, which came out on the Wii, which I used to play a lot as a kid. And man, coming back to these as an adult, I was like, oh, maybe it won't have aged that well. Aged like a fine wine, super tight controls. Every level makes you feel like you've played it before. I heard that said about the game and I was like, that's the perfect way of describing it. You're just racing through levels. So much fun. Please check out Rayman Legends. Next up, we have Ruined King. This was a League of Legends turn-based RPG. Played probably 10-15 hours of it. Turn-based combat really was dry in this game, and the story just didn't hook me. I was really excited to see how they would expand the League universe. I was a big League player back in the day, but it just didn't click for me. So maybe I'll come back to it one day, but for now it's on the back burner. Next up, we have Slay the Spire, the best rogue. Actually, I really like Monster Train too, but Slay the Spire, it's the kind of original roguelike deck builder. Really, really, really well designed. A game that is so hard to put down. I remember the day I bought this game, I was playing it late into the night, and I just kept going, just one more run, just one more run. I looked out my window, and it was maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, and the sun was coming up. I have never done that playing a video game. I'm a very punctual person. This game just swallowed my time. Really amazing game. Highly recommend Slay the Spire. Sonic Mania? I did not like at all. I really thought this would be like my aha moment for Sonic. No way, man. I found it super frustrating. I was getting lost a lot. I didn't like how the momentum worked. Obviously, it's a great game. People love it, but it was not for me, man. I'll stick to Mario. Speaking of Mario, Mario Odyssey might be my favorite game on Switch still. Such a good game. I always say I could just fall off stuff in Super Mario Odyssey all day and I would be the happiest man on earth. Falling off of things in that game is so fun because there's always a way to get back up. There are so many options for movement. Such a well-designed game. I wish it was harder throughout. It's just too easy, but what can you do? And that will do it for the Switch collection. So let's move on to the Wii games. All right, welcome back. And we finished off the Nintendo Switch games, so it's time to get into some Wii and Wii U games. I don't have a lot of Wii U games, so I'm just gonna bundle them in here. I am a proud Wii U owner. It's what I play my Wii games on actually nowadays. To start off, I will show off my first Wii U game, the only game I do not have a case for in my entire collection, Mario Kart 8. The reason I don't have a case for this game is actually because when I bought my Wii U, I got it secondhand, and the guy did not realize he had left the game inside the console. The listing said it came with Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, my other game that I have for my Wii U, physically that is. And yeah, we got it home and we went to go put the game in, me and my buddy, and we realized Mario Kart 8 was already in there. So pretty good score. Both games are awesome. I didn't really get to talk about Mario Kart 8, the game everyone knows, the modern Mario Kart. It's pretty fun. I'm personally a Mario Kart Wii guy, which we'll get to, don't worry, it's over here. But it's a good Mario Kart game, great to run up with some friends, and definitely the Mario game with the most content. Yeah, there's pretty much nothing like it as far as content goes. Unlocking all the car parts in Mario Kart 8 and all the tracks and whatnot, very fun process. Again, probably the most content. I'm kind of sad I can't get the expansion pass in this one. There's a bunch of new courses they added for the Nintendo Switch release of this game, but I've still got it on Wii U and I do not have it on Switch. All right, now we're moving on to Wii games. So this is my first childhood collection. So these are all Wii games from my childhood. Actually, there were a couple I picked up recently, but for the most part, these are all my childhood games. It's not every game I played on Wii. Back in the day, I would trade my games into GameStop to get new ones. So this is just what I have left, essentially. Starting with Smash Brothers Brawl. Very divisive game. This was my childhood Smash Brothers game, though. So to me, pretty solid game. I really enjoy it. I loved playing as Solid Snake in this one as a kid, and Meta Knight, obviously. It's a Wii game. It's got its limitations. It's a good one. I really like, actually, Starship Emissary, I believe is what it's called. It's the single player story for this game. Really cool. Definitely the best single player experience in a Smash Brothers game. Next up, we have The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess on the Wii. This was a game I remember seeing at a buddy's house when I was a little kid. He had it for the GameCube, and I picked it up a couple years later, and I was so stuck as a little kid. I never got past like the first dungeon. It wasn't my favorite as a kid. I know I need to go back to this one. People talk about it like it was, the second coming of Christ, and it probably is. I would love to, I wasn't a Zelda fan at this time. Playing through Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom has really turned me into a Zelda fan, and I kind of forgot I owned this one, and now I'm really excited to go back to it. Next up, we have a Nintendo Wii launch title, actually, I believe, Excite Truck. Excite Truck is part of the Excite Bike lineage, I believe. I believe it's developed by Nintendo. Yes, it's developed by Nintendo. Kind of an arcadey style racer. Really fun. If you haven't played this one for some reason, if it just hasn't crossed your path, pick it up. It's so good. You can usually get it super cheap. There's a really good boost mechanic that just like motion blurs everything and you feel like you're going so fast. It's so funny. I dropped all my freaking games. Next up, we have probably my childhood favorite Wii game. This was me and my friends' like go-to party game, Cooking Mama Cook Off. It is just Cooking Mama mini games that you play with a Wiimote. So it kind of has a WarioWare feel to it. They're like 40-second mini games that you're like frantically shaking your Wii remote. I remember chopping veggies was my favorite one. You just shook the Wii remote. There's a couple other like memory games in it. I loved this game as a kid. Going back to it, it's not that good, but it's still worth a good laugh because it's very like comedic cooking in a lot of ways. And you can get it for like $1 usually at a game store, so why not? While we're on the topic of Cooking Mama, I'm also going to pull out the other Cooking Mama title I have for the Nintendo Wii. This one, I actually haven't played. I was just at a game store, and I think this game was $1 or something, and I was like, well, I can get this. But then I never booted it up. I definitely should. See the back, it looks very funny. The box is completely destroyed. It was like chewed by a dog. That's why it was so cheap. Definitely one of the games I will be checking out one day, maybe with some friends. Let's hit up next. I've got a boxed copy of Wii Sports. Not something you always see. So Nintendo Wii's for a long time came bundled with Wii Sports in a sleeve, not in a box. But my family actually lost our copy, and my dad loved Wii Sports, specifically Wii Sports Golf. And when he found out me and my sister had lost it, he was like, well, I'll go get another one because I'm not giving up on Wii Sports Golf. Wii Sports is Wii Sports. It's a great game. Follow that up with another game my dad bought, Wii Sports Resort, which is the sequel to Wii Sports on the Wii. It uses the Wii Motion Plus, so it has like more accurate tracking of the Wiimote. You can do stuff like sword fighting, water skiing, flying a plane was my favorite as a kid. And this was also my dad's buy, so he had asked for this game for Christmas, and no one got it for him. And then on the day after Christmas, he drove to Costco and bought it for himself. And now I own it because I think he forgot he bought it, but don't have to tell him. My dad's also not a gamer. Like, these were both very ridiculous purchases for him. Next up, we have probably my favorite Wii game. Also, this box is heavy as all heck. Holy smokes. Look at this manual. Sorry, a bit of a spoiler for what the game is, but that's Super Mario Galaxy. Does it have like 900 languages? Oh, okay. It has a bunch of different languages. Super Mario Galaxy. One of the best games on the Wii. I've never played the sequel, Super Mario Galaxy 2 yet, but that's gonna have to be something I get one day because it's just such an excellent game. So 3D platformer, you run around like little planets, collect-a-thoning, doing Mario things. The stages are a bit more linear. I would say it's kind of in between Mario 64 and Mario 3D World, where it's like linear on small open worlds. Very, very cool. Next up, we've got the legend Mario Kart Wii. The best Mario Kart game as I mentioned earlier. So the whole gimmick of this one is you play it with motion control. So you actually like hold a wheel, do this with it. Really funny. You can see Mario and Luigi are holding what are called Wii wheels, if you weren't alive during this generation. My dad, going back to my dad, he played a lot of Wii games actually back in the Wii era. He 100%ed this game. Playing like a completely non-meta build. He would grind it every night after me and my sister went to sleep. That tells you how good of a game this is, that my 50-year-old father was obsessed with it, who also wasn't a gamer, and he 100%ed it. Now we have my biggest childhood disappointment, Mario Party 9. Oh my gosh, the sticker is still on it. I paid $44 for this game as a kid, which was a lot of money for a used Wii game. So my buddy had Mario Kart 8, and I would go over there, or not Mario Kart, Mario Party 8, and I would go over there and play it all the time. And so I went to the store to go buy it for myself, and on that shelf was Mario Party 9, and I was like, higher number, must be a better game. This game stinks. This game is the worst Mario Party ever. So in 8, each player moved individually like a board game. In 9, you all moved together in this car. You can see the characters in the car. Terrible. The mini games were worse. Everything about this game sucked. I was very disappointed as a kid. Kind of one of those first heartbreak moments. Finally, I'm going to talk about both these games at once. We have Madden 10 and Madden 8. Again, both childhood games. I also had Madden 12 with Peyton Hillis on it, but I must have lost it at some point. Madden 10 was my favorite as a kid. Troy Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald on the covers. It has this weird cartoony art style. I think they only did it for the Wii edition because they couldn't run the full version on the Wii. So they made like a custom mini version. I tried going back to these games. They suck. They're terrible. They're like nearly unplayably bad. But as a kid, I loved them. And our final game, there was this morning, I woke up and all I wanted to play was weird shovelware. I couldn't explain why. And so I went to the game store and I bought this. This is Code Lyoko Quest for Infinity. Code Lyoko was this like early 2000s animated TV show that I like only remember as a fever dream. And the video game is terrible. It's the only Wii game I've ever played that only is in 4:3 aspect ratio. If I had to guess, this game probably originally released on PS2 or something and then got ported, but it's really bad. It's so bad. It's kind of like a level-based point the Wiimote at the screen to shoot targets game. Really weird. It's made by the Game Factory, which are not the best devs. Yeah, don't recommend this one, but it is worth a good laugh. One of the most ridiculous experiences I've had recently playing a game. And that will do it actually for my Wii collection. So I'll hold up the whole stack here. Definitely not a good collection as far as like the quality of the games, but they're very nostalgic to me. The Wii was my first real console, like got it for Christmas back in 2007, and all these games have so many memories and are what made me into a gamer. Right on, next up we have one of my favorite collections that I own, my GameCube collection. So I was just talking about the Wii, and Wii, at least the original Wiis, could play GameCube games. And my buddy put me onto GameCube games. He was like, yo, bro, they're really cheap and there's some really good games you should check out. And I'm so thankful I bought these games when I did, because I still have the price tags on a lot of these games from when I bought them. And we'll just start with one of my favorite games of all time, Mario Kart Double Dash. Is the price tag still on it? Oh, no, it's not. Okay, we'll get to the ones with price tags, but we'll start with Mario Kart Double Dash. Why not? You can co-op in this Mario Kart. It's the only Mario Kart that ever did it. But basically, one friend drives, one friend throws the items. It's got tons of fun side modes. The gameplay is so crisp and clean. Like, drifting in this game is peak. Like, I think they nailed the drifting in this game. Items are really fun. The cast is really fun. Mario Kart Double Dash. Check it out, especially if you're a more recent Nintendo fan or recent Mario Kart fan. If you can emulate this or something, you will have a blast. All right, here we go. We got one with the price on it. My probably favorite 3D, no, never mind. Definitely never mind. I'm just gonna not even finish that sentence. Sonic Heroes. You can see they're $7.99. No idea what this game costs now, but GameCube games ain't cheap. But back then, they were like giving them away. No one wanted to buy GameCube games. Sonic Heroes 3D platformer, where there are basically 4 different teams. There's Team Sonic, Team Dark, Team Chaotix, and Team Rose. And you swap between the 3 characters in each team. So you can play through this game 4 times with 4 separate teams, which is very cool. The theme song is awesome. Very buggy. Like, I went back to this game recently and I was like clipping through the floor. It was It's not the most well-programmed game, but very nostalgic for me. I was kind of a Sonic fan as a little kid, so like I remember seeing this game at friends' houses and thinking it was really cool. And I was about to say my favorite 3D platformer on the GameCube, and then I remembered one of my favorite games of all time, Super Mario Sunshine. Excellent game. Got this one for $15. No idea how much it costs now, but it's definitely not that cheap. I remember this one was an expensive GameCube game. Like I was like, oh, I'm really spending on this one, but this was a game I only experienced at a friend's house growing up. Same guy I would go play Pikmin with, actually. This was my favorite game ever. I would just watch him play it all day long. I thought it was brilliant. The world is so fun. It's all like beach vibes. This did get a re-release on Switch, actually, in that Mario collection. So if you do want to play it, there's a much more accessible way now. Really good game, though. Mario 3D platformer. The gimmick, I guess, is that you have like a water jetpack that you can use to like, you can spray in front of you, but you can also use it like a jetpack or as like a booster or as like a horizontal booster, and you can run on water. Very, very, very cool game. Next up, I alluded to this game earlier. It's actually kind of ironic. The last two games I own twice. But we have Metroid Prime for the Nintendo GameCube. So this game just got a re-release, but I remember playing this game as a kid and just getting stuck. I will say, so I replayed through this game on Switch, and as a kid I played on a really poor quality TV, and I remember everything was so dark, and I realized that was probably not the game's fault, it was my terrible TV's fault, because this game is actually pretty like visual, like it's not that hard to see stuff, but as a kid I couldn't see anything, and I think it was my bad TV. And finally, we've already talked about this game too, but Pikmin 1 on the Nintendo GameCube, you can see the price tag there, $10. $10 pre-owned, probably from a GameStop. Fantastic little game. It's I never really mentioned this, I guess, in the last portion, but it's Nintendo's take on an RTS. You get these little like vegetable men called Pikmin. They can complete tasks for you, they can fight enemies for you, and you're just like a captain kind of commanding them. Really well done. The only time I've ever seen an RTS like nailed on controller. So yeah, Pikmin, check it out. Check it out on Switch though, don't buy the GameCube versions. Actually buy it on Wii. The Wii versions are crazy, there's a bunch of unique mechanics to them. They're really expensive, but apparently it's the best way to play them. Now I've only got one more Nintendo collection left, but that is my handheld Nintendo collection. So I don't actually have the boxes for these games with me. I do own the boxes. They're just in my childhood bedroom. So we're just gonna be looking at cartridges here, but hopefully you can get the memo. So we'll start with my Nintendo DS games. The Nintendo DS was a console I had as a kid, and actually all these games but one in this pile for the Nintendo DS were actually from my childhood. So we'll start with Mario Kart DS. Hey, that worked. Mario Kart DS. This is a Mario game I still go back to. I have a 3DS and I pop this in all the time. There's a mission mode in this game where you can like fight bosses and stuff. It's so rad and something I go back to all the time because I think it's really fun. Also, the drifting in this game feels super good. It was where I like learned to play Mario Kart correctly. And so me and my buddies got really good at this game. Playing it on the bus as a kid was just magical. Sticking with the DS, we'll go with Guitar Hero Legends of Rock. So if you've never seen DS Guitar Hero, it is ridiculous. You put like a grip on the bottom of your DS in the Game Boy slot, Game Boy Advance slot, and it would like wrap around your hand and you would play it like a Rock Band guitar. Really funny. I don't think I have the attachment actually anymore, but I played a ton of this game as a kid. Really fun game. Really cool that they were able to pull it off on the Nintendo DS. Another game I played a lot as a kid, Mystery Case Files Millionaire. Air is spelled with an H, like the son of a millionaire. This is a hidden object game with like a basic mystery story. These guys make like terrible Facebook games now. Mystery Case Files is actually a very big series, but I loved this game as a kid. I thought it was super wacky. I beat it like 10 times. It was super easy to beat, but I really liked it as a kid. If you can find it somewhere, it's maybe worth a look. Very nostalgic for me. Ooh, now we have not so good of a game. Probably my first DS game I wouldn't recommend. Guinness World Records. So this is like a mini game collection based on popular Guinness World Records. They all control terribly. Most of them use the touch screen and they just kind of suck. So I would firm pass on this one if you find it in a store. And my final DS game is the best one, and maybe the best game on the Nintendo DS, beside its sequel, Pokemon White version. I remember buying this game for like $15 at a game store with the box. This game is now well over $100, and I think that was such a great find. Amazing Pokemon game. My favorite one I've ever played. I've never played Black and White 2. Apparently those are also excellent. But yeah, this is a very special game. It's the game that got me back into Pokemon. I was going on a road trip and I was like, I'll grab a Pokemon game for the road trip. And this was the only one they had for a reasonable price. I couldn't have been more happy with the purchase. So that's it for my DS games. Let's go on to 3DS now, which is actually a little bit of a bigger collection of mine. Not really, I guess. But I do love the 3DS, one of my favorite consoles. Let's start with the first game I got bundled with my 3DS, Mario Party Tropical Tour. Not a very good game. Kind of like Mario Party 8 or Mario Party 9. You're all in a car together. The mini games are kind of phoned in. There were a couple really good ones. The one where you're a dolphin and you're jumping through the hoops was rad. All the other ones were not my favorite. The reason I even own this game, I found a deal for Nintendo 3DSs around the end of their life cycle, and $100 you got a 3DS XL with this game, which was an amazing deal. So my first real game I bought for the console was Super Mario 3D Land. Really cool Mario game. I don't think this game gets talked about enough because it was kind of like gimmicky for its time, but nowadays I feel like it's really living on as like a great game. Level-based, kind of like 3D World, but much more tightly designed levels. Almost like a 2D side-scrolling Mario, but it has just a little bit of depth so you can move back and forth. Also, the 3D in this game is, in my opinion, the best 3D ever on the 3DS. Like, totally sells it, adds to the experience. Really cool game. You know what, let's cross off this one. Monster Hunter 3. I wanted to love this game, and I just bounced off of it. It's a really opaque game. It's not super beginner friendly, and I got this game, I was maybe in my mid-teens, and it was just so frustrating. I remember I got on a road trip, and so I couldn't even like look at anything up. And it's not a great experience. I think if I had a friend that was able to like walk me through it and get me into it, I probably would have loved it. But yeah, never put much time into it. And now we get into my 3DS Pokemon collection with Pokemon X, an interesting Pokemon game. I think it falls in an interesting spot. It's the first 3D one, which is why I was so excited for it. But it just kind of misses the mark as far as the Pokemon games go. Obviously, this is the game that comes out after Pokemon Black 2, which is regarded as like the best one of all time. And this one's a lot more bland than those games, but it was cool to see all the Pokemon in 3D. All the new animations were cool, and you have the full decks, which rip to that on the Switch games for sure. Next up, I have Pokemon Moon. This is my favorite modern Pokemon game. It's my favorite 3D Pokemon game, I should say. So I love Scarlet and Violet. That's number 2. But I think Sun and Moon, and I guess I'll just pull it up now, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which are the sequels, just expanded versions of the same game. The Sun and Moon games are really, really, really good, and I don't think enough people talk about them, but the changes they made to the formula, like there are not gym battles in these games. No one talks about that. But instead they're called island challenges, and they're way more fun. The boss fights are actually hard. There's so many good reasons to check out these games. I really like the worlds. The worlds are based on Hawaii, which I love Hawaii. Like, I visited 5 times in my life, I realized the other day, and these games just capture that feel so well. It starts really slow. It's my only complaint is like, you have to sit through like 15 minutes of cutscenes just to start the game, which is pretty ridiculous. And that will do it for my Nintendo DS games and 3DS games, I guess. Right on. Okay, next up, I'm going to show off my Xbox collection. So I bought an Xbox last year. I bought an Xbox Series X. It's my first modern console, like, that I can play AAA games on. And so I've been trying to play more of these big AAA games that I missed out on for years because I never owned one of these big consoles. You know, I'm not doing the best job of that, and most of the time I just play games on Game Pass, so it's actually a very small collection of Xbox physical games I have. I'll start out with the only 360 game I have in my collection, and probably my favorite physical Xbox game I own, Max Payne 3. First, one of my favorite things about this game, it comes on 2 discs. Isn't that awesome? You never get that these days. You only need the first disc to actually play the game on a modern console because it like updates the graphics for you, which is really cool. It also comes with a beautiful color manual. I mean, just look at some of these. I mean, that's not a good page, but just look at all this stuff. It's so cool. Made by Rockstar, if you didn't know, Max Payne 3. It's the only Max Payne game made by Rockstar. Gameplay feels a lot like GTA 5 if you're playing as Michael. And actually, the character of Max Payne feels a lot like Michael as well. The world in this game is so detailed. I loved being in it. Really gritty game. Like, it's an adult game in every way possible. I think if you've seen like more adult thrillers, especially from this era, this is like early 2010s, you're really gonna like this one. It's only about a 10-hour-ish experience. Loved every minute of it. Really cool game. Got recommended by a podcast I like called Something Rotten. Listened to their whole podcast, then played the game. Still was an amazing time. Next up, let's go with the only other one of these that I've actually played a substantial amount of. Control, which, speaking of Max Payne, Control is actually made by the original devs of Max Payne. So the people who made Max Payne 1 and 2, Remedy. They also made Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2, which came out last year. This game is so cool. You're a woman who is going to this government organization that like takes these magical items that can, I don't want to call them like effigies, but like powerful objects that all have certain powers. Your power is like you can lift rocks out of the ground and like throw them at enemies, almost like an earthbender in Avatar. What a cool game. The story is super like surreal. It's actually in the Alan Wake universe, so if you like Alan Wake, this is a great game to play. Whoops, my phone ran out of storage, but we're back, so I'll talk about my last two games at once for the Xbox. We have Elden Ring and Dark Souls 2. So Dark Souls 2 was the first one I bought of the two, and I bounced off it pretty quick. I got to the first boss and got stuck, which that's pretty normal for Dark Souls, but I had some friends say, hey, if that's not really clicking with you, Elden Ring's pretty fun, and you won't have to like bash your head against the wall, because I really wasn't enjoying that aspect of Dark Souls 2. I played probably 5 or 6 hours of Elden Ring and then started ramming my head against a wall again. And obviously I could have gone to explore, but I couldn't find something that wasn't just tedious. Wasn't my favorite game, but it's actually one I really want to revisit, possibly even revisit on this channel. Keep your eyes out for this one. Maybe we'll stream it or something. Let me know, should I? Or is everyone overrating this game? Next up, you see that the shelf behind me got a lot emptier. That's because we have one of my biggest collections, but actually one that I bought with the console that I bought it with, and it was all just one big haul, one guy's collection of games. So I haven't actually played like almost any of these games. I bought the PS3 to just play old Madden games. I like Madden, and old console Madden is better than new Madden, apparently. So I bought a PS3, and I kind of disagree. I think I like modern Madden better, but that's a side note. So let's start with another reason why I love this console. You can get old Call of Duty games for like nothing on these guys. Call of Duty World at War, excellent game, I think. I don't know, I just play zombies. This is the game that introduced them. So you have Shangri-La, not Kino der Toten, but Die Under Toten or something. Introduced the concept of zombies. I love zombies. I'm not a big multiplayer Call of Duty guy, so old Call of Duty games are always welcome in my collection. Staying on the topic of old Call of Duties, MW3. I just picked this one up the other day. It was $5. This doesn't have zombies, but it does have Juggernaut mode. Survival mode is what it's called. And you fight Juggernauts. Kind of like a single player, like wave-based combat mode. Pretty fun. Again, I like the side modes in Call of Duty. I'm not much of a multiplayer guy. Maybe I'll play the stories on some of these Call of Duty sometime, because they are pretty famous, even if they're not necessarily good. Next up, we have Skyrim. Another game I found for $5, so I picked it up. Amazing game. I actually, more often nowadays, I'll play this on my Series X. It's the greatest fantasy game maybe ever made. Very nostalgic for me. This game came out when I was like 12, and it was so cool to me and all my friends. I loved going over to my friends' houses, and they'd be like, dude, look at this thing. And I didn't own the game for a long time, personally, so it was like getting to see the world through other people. I was like, this world is so big. It's big, but it's really not as big as I think it was in my childhood mind. All right, now we got a larger section here. I don't even know if I can show you all the covers at once. Maybe we'll just go through them. But I have every Madden from Madden 08 all the way to Madden 25. I'm only missing Madden 12, which is the one with Peyton Hillis on the front. Some of these don't have boxes. This was all from the person I bought the console from. They had a pretty much full collection of Madden games. I've actually gone back through and played a lot of them. It's fun to see how the series has grown, but they're really not that special of games and kind of buggy in the PS3 generation. It's pretty surprising how unpolished they were. As a kid, I saw these games as very polished, but yeah, really not. So yeah, it goes all the way from Madden 07 through Madden 25. So whole bunch of Madden games. I do want to go back and maybe, play a season on each of them or something one day, just to see how the series is changing. Next up, I'm going to go through these super fast. Also came with my console, a bunch of WWE games. I've never played any of them. I did have a buddy, and he would invite me over to his house and we would play one of these games. It was on the PS3, and it was pretty cool. He would always play like scenarios, and it would be like a famous fight. He was a big WWE fan. I'm not, but cool that I have this collection. I would love to see what this series is like, because I know nothing about it. Here is a great game, a game I haven't played a ton of, but my friend had back in the day. It's MotorStorm. Which, who made this? Oh, okay, MotorStorm. Now I remember. MotorStorm is literally made by Sony. So this was their racing game. I think it was close to a launch title. I don't know if it was a true launch title, but I do remember a friend having it. But yeah, I haven't played it. It came with the console. Here's an interesting game that I actually did check out. This is All Pro Football 2K8. So this is a really interesting game. What this game was, EA bought the license to NFL football. And 2K at the time made NFL 2K5, which is regarded as like the greatest football game ever made, but they now didn't have the license. So they licensed a bunch of like NFL legends instead. So it's kind of like a fantasy football game where you can make teams out of like the greatest of all time with really good mechanics. I played this for a little while and it feels weird. As someone who's only played Madden, it's actually quite hard to like adjust to. But it did feel really good. Apparently the franchise mode is really fun. Getting to the bottom of our stack here. Gran Turismo. This is Gran Turismo 5 Prologue. I haven't played it yet, but I do know the Gran Turismo games are good. I've played Gran Turismo 7 a good amount. They're beautiful games. I'm sure it wouldn't look as good nowadays, but in the PS3 era, this was quite the show off. Next up, we have something very cool. Again, I haven't played it yet, but this is NASCAR Days of Thunder, the video game. Days of Thunder was a movie, apparently, and they based a video game on it, a NASCAR video game movie tie-in. Sounds ridiculous. I have a friend whose dad was obsessed with NASCAR games growing up, and I think they had this one. I should watch the movie at least, because I think it'll be very funny, but another one that got bundled in with when I bought the console. And finally, we got this little mystery game, probably the best game I have, GTA 4. GTA 4 is an excellent game. This is one I actually have played, not on the PS3, I played on PC. But I mean, what a game. Kind of a gritty immigrant tale, which is as bad as I think Rockstar is at writing characters. This is definitely their best written game, in my opinion. There is certain issues with it. You can, it's a story about a poor guy, but then like the gameplay of GTA makes you feel rich and powerful. So there's a weird dissonance to that. But outside of that, I mean, one of the best games ever. All right, we're nearly there. Let's hop into the rest of my digital collections. Right on. So moving along, we have my final collection, which is my digital Steam collection. I was a Steam gamer for many years. I have over 300 games on Steam. I was a Humble Bundle addict back in the day. So I haven't played a lot of these games. We're not going to go through every last one, but I've got them sorted by playtime. So you can see the ones I've at least put some hours into. Number one spot by almost 500 hours, actually over 500 hours, MapleStory. So this is a Korean MMO with an adorable art style, great music, and one of the worst games ever made. The developers are very greedy, and it just leads to this bloated, unfun, grindy game. It's still, I've put 1,000 hours into it, but it just feels manipulative, so I've kind of stepped away from the game of late. But if you ever wonder why I've stopped uploading, it's probably because I've gone into a MapleStory-induced coma, and I haven't seen the light of day for many, many weeks. Next up, we have The Perfect Tower 2. The fact I have 550 hours in this game is insane, but it is an idle game. Probably my favorite idle game. There's so many mechanics in this game that it's like barely idle. Like you can just boot it up and play it for hours. I used to just have it open on a second monitor and just constantly be coming back to it. I'm kind of glad I've stepped away because it was a big time thief. Next up, we have one of my favorite games of all time, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. And I guess we can talk about, well, Flash Isaac is a worse version, but it's the one I fell in love with initially. And then I've put 420 hours into The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I have all the DLCs, though I have not played the most recent one, whatever it's called. It was Anti-Birth, but I think maybe it has a different name. But yeah, one of my favorite games of all time. You saw in the videos with Facecam, I've got a Super Meat Boy plush behind me. I love everything Edmund has ever worked on. One of my favorite developers of all time. I love his art styles. And Isaac was one of the first games I truly fell in love with on my computer. Next up, we have Legends of Eidolon. So this is a idle MMO, and it's actually heavily inspired by MapleStory, which is pretty interesting. And you talk about MapleStory being a grindy game. Eidolon is 50 times more grindy. It does have some really cool mechanics, like there are big boss fights you can do, but it kind of becomes overwhelming at some point, and I had to kind of step away. Spelunky, the original, hands down, plain and simple, one of the greatest video games ever made. I have beat Olmec quite a few times. I think I beat Yama once, and I've only got it once, and it's a very proud achievement of mine. 280 hours This was a go-to in my childhood. Me and a buddy of mine would do the daily every day. An incredible roguelike platformer that if you have not gotten to check out, there is a sequel out now, Spelunky 2. The original still holds up, guys. It's amazing. Amazing, amazing game. Next up, we have Stardew Valley. This is one of the only games on my account where all the hours are not mine. In high school, my father fell in love with Stardew Valley and would play it on my Steam account, but he would only chop trees. This man made $100,000 in Stardew Valley just chopping trees every day. He played for like 2 years, 2 in-game years. He loves this game, and I think that was very funny. I also love Stardew Valley, I guess. It's a life sim in the vein of Harvest Moon. NGU Industries is an idle game where you make factories, kind of inspired by Factorio. It's pretty good. I didn't actually play it that much. I just left it running a lot. Terraria. So Terraria is a game that I also left running as a kid, so that's why I have so many hours in it. But actually recently, I went back and beat the game. Not completely, but I at least got to hard mode. I didn't beat Moonlord, but it was a really cool experience. By the time I beat the Wall of Flesh, it gets really grindy. Apparently, where I was at in the game, someone was telling me, is a really grindy part, and it kind of picks up after that, but I kind of fell off after the Wall of Flesh. But it was really cool to finally get to see what this game had to offer, because I'd tried for so many years and just never quite got into it. Adventure Capitalist, another idle game. It's fine. I don't really have much to comment on. Clicker Heroes is an amazing idle game. I actually played this one largely on browser, so I don't have a ton of hours in the Steam version. Very classic clicker game, almost like Cookie Clicker, but it has a bunch of RPG elements. Next up, a game we already mentioned, GTA 4. Have it on PS3, but great game. Next up, GTA 5. I played this game. So when I played it, there was no multiplayer. So I've really never played the multiplayer of GTA 5. I just played the single player right around launch. They actually waited a year to launch the multiplayer. So I played just the single player, and it was amazing. The world is so much fun to be in. Driving cars is a blast. The music is awesome. I love the 2015 hip hop that is still in that game is really special to me. Like Kendrick Lamar, a lot of the TDE guys are on that album. Really special game. If you haven't gotten to play it, find a way to. I played this game on a computer that couldn't run it. So I played this game at about 20 FPS, start to finish, 60 hours, and I don't regret a second. Next up, we have Moonstone Island, a game I've played heavily on the channel. I was actually shocked to see how many hours I had in the game. I do leave it running every once in a while when I'm recording, but wow. I mean, what a game. So similar to Stardew Valley, but then you add on top of that, instead of Zelda style combat in Stardew Valley, this one has card-based combat. And then also there's Pokemon mechanics. So to get those cards, you capture these things called spirits, you build a deck with them. Honestly, if you want to learn more about the game, I have 30 or 40 videos made about the game. I'm not kidding. So maybe check some of those out. I really think this game's special, and I don't think it got enough coverage for how good it is. Next up, we have Don't Starve. This is a 2D-ish survival game with kind of a Tim Burton-y art style. I played this game right around launch, and it has gotten so many updates. Back when I played this game, there wasn't even continents. Like the biomes were like little circular islands with bridges in between them. If you find some old footage of the game, that was when I played most of it. It's a really good game, and I would love to go back to it. BTD 5, Bloons Tower Defense 5. If you don't know about Bloons Tower Defense game where you are monkeys popping balloons. This one was a big one among me and my friends. We would play the multiplayer of this one a lot. I've also played this one a lot in browser, like during school. It was kind of my go-to during class game. Portal 2. Plain and simple, one of the greatest puzzle games ever made, developed by Valve, the people who make Steam. The game revolves around, basically with a portal gun, you can place like a blue and an orange portal, and they will link together, and you solve puzzles by walking through the portals. Really cool design for a game. The multiplayer is awesome. That's where most of my time in Portal 2 has come from, but excellent games. If you haven't played them, they're often on sale for like free, so you should definitely play them. CS, Counter-Strike. I've actually not played Counter-Strike 2 at all, but it did get a big update recently. This is a tactical shooter I would play with friends sometimes. 41 hours I think is a little inflated. I think I left it running a couple times. Never my game, but I had a lot of friends that liked it. We mentioned the Super Meat Boy plush earlier. Super Meat Boy, another Edmund McMillen game. This is a super hard Twitch platformer. Kind of the game that like would inspire games like Celeste coming later, and kind of a rage game too, which is pretty funny. It was meant to just, really be difficult. I fell in love with that game. One of the first games I got on Steam. I remember beating it and just could not get enough. Such a cool art style, great music. Everything about Super Meat Boy is brilliant. Next up we have Hero Siege. Hero Siege was Vampire Survivors before Vampire Survivors. Like when I first saw Vampire Survivors, I'm like, is that Hero Siege? Like, did Hero Siege get a bunch of updates? I think they even added a Survivors mode to this game because they were like, that's our freaking game. But it was all about like kiting enemies, but it had heavier RPG elements. So there was actually permanent progression and whatnot. Really cool game. It never got the attention it deserved. Saints Row the Third. This is basically like GTA, but super over the top. I actually think Saints Row the Third is probably the best one if you do want to experience the Saints Row franchise. Saints Row 4 really jumps the shark, and there's like superpowers and everything, but this one's just like goofier GTA 5. You can have a big sword that looks like a male ding-a-ling, let's say that. You can make your characters look ridiculous. You can dress them up. There's crazy quests where it's like, I need you to go rob my ex-girlfriend, and you're like, okay. Really funny game. Probably hasn't aged that well. I played this game 10 plus years ago, but check it out maybe. TF2, class-based multiplayer shooter, 5-on-5, I want to say. It's good. I didn't play a ton of it. I only ever played heavy. Me and my friends, there was 3 of us. We all only played heavy, and we would just play the objective and just like mow people down as heavies. It was very funny. South Park Stick of Truth is an interesting game. So it's a game inspired by the show South Park, but also like a turn-based RPG. I think the combat in this game is very good. I don't love the humor. I actually like the humor of South Park for the most part, but there's just something. One, it's like video game jokes aren't my favorite, and also like it's just an older game, and a lot of the humor really has not aged that well. I hear people referencing this game a lot and jokes that it makes, and I kind of cringe where I'm like, ooh, it's really not as funny as I thought it was. Next up we have Enter the Gungeon. This is kind of a Isaac-like top-down roguelike where you're shooting guns, but all the guns, so you can get like 9 million different types of guns, and they all have special effects. And it's kind of a bullet hell as well. Really, really, really fun game. Tight controls, endless content. I think my one gripe with this game is that the amount of content's so overwhelming. I don't want to play it for that long, because I play like 5 hours and then I'm like, do I really want to drop 60 hours on this game? No, and then I kind of give up. Next up we have Soulstone Survivors. This is a Vampire Survivor-like that is really good. If you liked Vampire Survivors but felt it wasn't fully fleshed out, this is the more fleshed out version. This was actually my first Survivor game, and I didn't even realize it was based on Vampire Survivors. I was just like, gameplay looks fun, I'll check it out. Picked it up, it was like $10 on Steam or something. And then I would like look at the name and I'm like, oh, Survivors, of course. The devs of this game were actually making like a dungeon crawler, and this was just a spin-off. But it's blown up so much. This is like what they work on now. Really fun. They're always adding new stuff. I just saw a video about this game recently, and they were talking about just how much like content is actually in this game. Next up, we have Trials. This is a motorcycle kind of parkour game. Really, really, really cool. This is an older Trials game. This is Gold, or Trials Evolution, which came out on the Xbox 360. I actually grew up playing this over at friends' houses all the time. Super fun, super tricky. Check it out if you like, racing games kind of, but it's more of trials, if you know what trial riding is. It's like doing stunts that are very technical, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Starbound is Terraria-like in space. It's fine. I felt like I got pretty directionless about maybe 10 hours in. I did play multiplayer with a buddy one time, and that was pretty fun, but didn't quite click with me. Borderlands 2, we have talked about this, but I did not realize I had 23 hours in the game. I played some co-op with buddies back in the day. A Wizard's Lizard, heavily inspired by Isaac-style top-down roguelike. Not very good, but I definitely did beat it back in the day. So it was pretty fun, and it was pretty hyped when it came out, and then no one really talked about it after. Factorio, y'all know Factorio. This is kind of a automation game, so you build up a big factory, you build machines to like sort and make new things with what you're generating from your factory. Really addicting. I will say I got stuck in what was essentially a death loop. Like, I saved and enemies were coming, and then the enemies would like destroy my stuff before I could build it up, and I just like essentially had to restart or like lower the difficulty, and that was pretty frustrating. Rocket League is car soccer. I don't love the game, but it's very popular. Civ 5 is what we call a 4X game. It's all based on tiles, so hexagonal tiles, and then you like take over swaths of land and build your villages on them and whatnot. If you haven't played Civ, it's very deep. You get to play as like historical figures, so it's like, oh, you can play as George Washington, or you can play as Gandhi. Very interesting game. Lego Harry Potter. It tells the stories of the first 4 Harry Potter movies as Lego games. Pretty fun, honestly. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, so it was cool. Mafia 2. Mafia 2 deserves more love. Mafia 2 is the best Mafia movie video game ever made. So it's an open world game like GTA, which is really cool, and you're gonna think, oh, this is gonna be like a GTA game. No, it is a very structured story. Like, it's open world, but I don't want to say nothing to do in the open world. Like, you go everywhere in it, but it's not like boring side activities. It's just a really tight story told in an open world set in like the 50s and maybe the 30s. So there's a time skip in the middle of the game, and like the whole world changes. Amazing game. More people need to play it. The story is good, characters are good, and I just think the idea of putting a really structured story in an open world is something more companies should experiment with, because I think that is fascinating. Just the fact that like you have a destination and you have the yellow line telling you how to drive there, but technically you could drive however you wanted. Like, you could take a long way, you could, stop by your girlfriend's house and see what she's up to. Just such a cool game. I love the open-endedness of a story game set in an open world. The Escapist is a top-down kind of puzzle game where you escape a prison. Really fun, really addicting. I beat probably 4 or 5 prisons in this game. Once you beat your first one, you really get hooked, I will say. So if you bounced off this game, try one of the easier prisons and just actually escape. Legends of Bumbo, Connect 3 game made by Edmund Macmillan, set in the Isaac universe. It's technically like a prequel to Isaac, I want to say. The art style, though, is the coolest part. It's all like cardboard cutouts, essentially, and they're all like animated like they're on little sticks. Such a cool art style. The gameplay was just a little too repetitive, though. Uber Destruction is kind of a shoot-'em-up roguelike that I found just randomly on YouTube. The dev actually has a YouTube channel. Played it here on YouTube as one of like the first Let's Plays of the game. The dev is a super nice guy. Reached out to me quite a few times every time I made a video on his game. Cool game. It did get, I don't know, I was having a little trouble letting it hook me, so I've been letting updates come back, and every once in a while I'll poke my head in the game and see what it has to offer. Mirror's Edge is a parkour first-person game. There's like light combat. Probably heard of this one. Really, really, really cool game. Never got as far in it as I would have liked, but maybe I'll come back one day. Game Dev Tycoon is a sort of roller coaster tycoon game, but you run an office of game developers. Very, very cool game. Portal 1, another great game. It's like Portal 2, but shorter. Next game I want to talk about is Inscryption. So Inscryption is a roguelike deck builder, but holy smokes, the atmosphere, the world building, everything about this game is so cool. It's got tons of twists. If this is your first time hearing about this game and it maybe slightly sounds interesting to you, look up nothing else, buy the game. I've never met anyone who has said this game was not like a 10 out of 10. And looking things up about the game will not make your experience better. Guaranteed. That's all I'll say. Next up, Trackmania Nations Forever. This is an arcade style racer that came out in like early 2000s, and I picked it up recently and it's so much fun. Really good racing game. Highly recommend it. Wolf Among Us. This is a Telltale game based on a comic book series of the same name. It's all Brothers Grimm fairy tales. So you have the big bad wolf is who you play as. Other folk tales. I want to say Three Little Pigs are in the game. Super gritty, super cool. A sequel actually came out just last year, which is insane. Another game I deeply love here, we're kind of skipping through now. I'm just going to talk about games that really catch my eye. Hotline Miami. So this is a top-down twin stick shooter would be the right way to describe it. Everything dies in one hit, including you, and you run through these levels and like they're very like Twitch, and you like die really fast. So you do these levels like 10 to 15 times before you get the perfect run, and you just feel like John Wick when you get it right. I mean, you're like turning, shooting a guy, throw your gun at a guy, he falls over, then you stab him in the face. Such a cool game. The atmosphere is amazing, and the music is like top 10 video game soundtracks all time for me. Next up, I'm going to talk about Tales of Trainspot. Another game I played on the channel. I really recommend you watch my playthrough of it. It's such a unique game. It's based on something called Hashi, which is a Japanese puzzle game where you like draw lines between train stations essentially. And you have to like satisfy numbers. It's kind of like Sudoku. Really, really, really good game. I highly recommend. Next up, Secrets of Grindia. Secrets of Grindia is a game that is honestly insane to me. I bought it back in 2015 and it's almost been 10 years and they still haven't gone out of early access. They've just been updating the game. Like there was an update in 2023. They've slowed down a lot, but they're really close to a full release. And so I think they're probably working on that. It's kind of a Zelda style game, but massive, like 30 times bigger than any top-down Zelda has ever been. Such a cool game. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. I need to play more of it. I didn't even realize it had gotten so many updates. Little Inferno is another game I find really, really, really interesting. It's made by the Tomorrow Corporation, who you might know from Human Resource Machine, or it's a lot of the people behind World of Goo. It's a game where you just burn stuff in a fireplace, and it's got this really cute story, great music, fun gameplay where you just get to burn stuff, and like each thing you burn has a unique effect essentially. So like you might get a bomb and it will explode. Really fun to see what all the things will do when you burn them, but not a must play. Another game I think is fascinating is Her Story. Her Story is so unique. It is essentially a FMV mystery game that includes a about 30-minute interview or a series of interviews with this woman, and they're all cut up into about 30-second clips with transcripts. So you look up words in the transcript and then they'll show up in like your search bar, but if you don't know the words said in the interviews, you can't find the clips, and then it's up to you to put the story together from there. Really, really, really cool mystery game. Probably one of the most interesting games I played last year for sure. Now, I could go on forever going through these games. I mean, we're only about halfway through my collection, but I think I'm going to stop with Nelson Tether's Puzzle Agent. This is a puzzle mystery game that is just really unique. It's made by Telltale actually, and it's set in Minnesota. It's a really funny little mystery game that only takes, 3.5 hours or so to beat. I actually did beat this game, and I really recommend trying it out. Some really clever puzzles and just a good point and click adventure outside of that. And with that, I am going to call it for the 100 sub Copeland Plays special. It has been such an amazing experience getting here with you guys, making all these videos. We're well over 100 videos made, you know, slowly over time. Y'all have been so supportive. I mean, you got me all the way to 100 subs. No slowing down from here. I've got plenty of other things planned, but I really hope you enjoyed the 100 sub special. And if it was your first time watching, maybe consider subscribing. All right, take care. Bye-bye.